All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something a little different.
Different. How so?
Well, the book's called Date Hotter Girls, The Four Elements of Game.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
But before anyone jumps to conclusions, this isn't about, you know, tricks or becoming some kind of pickup
Right.
artist.
It's not about manipulation or anything like that.
It's more about understanding attraction, confidence, the whole psychology of it all. Think of it like a deep dive into what makes people tick.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at some pretty fascinating ideas about communication and genuine connection.
Exactly. And our guides on this journey, authors Rob Judge and Zack Bauer, how sometimes dating advice can feel a little.
Fake.
Yeah.
Like you have to put on a persona.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're being told to act like someone you're not.
Yeah.
And this book really pushes back against that.
One of the things that stood out to me was how the authors, Rob and Zack, started with their own frustrations with traditional dating advice. They felt a lot of it was just too generic.
And it didn't really work for them, right?
Yeah, they weren't getting consistent, genuine results. So they went on a search for something, well, something better.
So what did they find? Did they discover some secret formula?
Not exactly a formula, but they found that the key was finding a balance within yourself, not trying to become someone else.
Okay, so it's about being genuine, but also understanding how to, I guess, present yourself in a way that connects with others.
Exactly. And that's where they introduced the idea of the four elements of game: drive, inspiration, authenticity, and connection.
Four elements of game. Sounds kind of like, I don't know, a video game or something.
I know, right? But trust me, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So each element represents a different part of, I guess, how we interact with and attract others.
Precisely. And the key takeaway here is that it's about the interplay between these elements, how they all work together.
So not just mastering one element in isolation, but finding that balance.
Exactly. Kind of like, when you're cooking, you need the right ingredients and the right proportions to make a truly amazing dish.
Speaking of creating something amazing, there's a great story in the book about Zack, Rob's co-author. Apparently he used to be terrible at talking to women.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Until he tapped into his natural inspiration, and then, boom, things changed for him.
It's a great example of how these elements aren't just abstract ideas. You can actually use them to get real results. So, inspiration. What does that even mean? Do you have to become a poet or something?
Well, hold on. We'll definitely unpack each element a bit later. But for now, think of inspiration as that spark that makes you engaging. It's about finding your voice.
So not putting on a show, but figuring out what makes you you. I like that.
And it challenges a lot of the conventional dating advice out there that focuses on things like money or looks or using those cheesy pickup lines.
Oh, you mean the ones that make everyone cringe? Yeah, it seems like this book's all about something much deeper than that.
Exactly. They debunk a lot of those myths about dating. For example, they don't think you need to be rich or have six-pack abs to attract someone. Rob himself says he was just a regular guy, and he used to really struggle with dating.
That's interesting. It makes you think about all the times we might have felt insecure because we didn't fit some unrealistic ideal.
Exactly. The book encourages you to challenge those assumptions
Yeah.
and really recognize your own value.
I'm definitely intrigued. But before we get too deep into the four elements, there are a couple of, well, intriguing things in the book that I just have to mention. Like, there's a story about a construction worker named Tony who gives Rob this life-changing advice.
Ah, yes. Tony and his 12 words of wisdom. Just scribbled on a napkin, but apparently it had a huge impact on Rob's whole approach to dating.
The thing is, they don't tell you what the words are at that point. It's like a total tease.
Right. Makes you want to keep reading.
And then there's this other image that stuck with me. It's Rob's college friend's dorm room. And let's just say it was covered in evidence of his success with women.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. It was a pretty bold image. But they use it to make a point about natural attraction, I think.
So are they saying we should all, aspire to have dorm rooms like that?
Not exactly. The point is that this friend wasn't trying too hard. He was just comfortable with himself. And it showed.
So it's about finding your own path to confidence rather than trying to copy someone else.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the idea of balance. Being confident, but also genuine and approachable.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but let's step back for a second. Even if you're not trying to, date hotter girls, what can we learn from this book that applies to life in general?
That's a great question. Like the idea of drive.
Yeah.
It's not just about approaching women, it's about having that inner motivation to go after what you want in any area of life.
Right, whether it's starting a business, asking for a promotion, whatever.
Exactly. And inspiration, as we'll talk about more later, is about finding your voice and
Mhm.
connecting with people. Those are important skills no matter what you're doing.
I'm starting to see how this goes way beyond dating. It's about personal growth and understanding how to connect with people.
And one thing I really appreciate is that the authors encourage you to think critically about everything. They want you to use your own judgment.
Which is what we're all about here on the deep dive. It's not about blindly accepting anything, but about forming your own conclusions.
It seems like we've only scratched the surface here. We still haven't uncovered Tony's 12 words or really explored the four elements in detail.
And don't forget that hidden mic pickup and commentary bonus. We get to hear Rob putting all of this into practice in a real life situation.
It's like a masterclass in attraction. But before we get to all that,
We'll be diving into all that juicy stuff in just a moment, so stick around.
okay, so the four elements of game. We keep mentioning them, but we should probably actually talk about what they are.
Yeah, let's start with drive, because honestly, it sounds kind of intimidating. Like, am I supposed to become some kind of, I don't know, workaholic or something?
Well, remember, it's all about balance. It's not about being this super driven type A personality.
Okay, so what is it about then?
Drive here is about, I guess you could say, cultivating that inner spark, that sense of purpose that makes you want to move forward.
So it's not so much about external achievements, but about that internal motivation.
Exactly. And remember, they were writing this for guys who were feeling stuck, lacking the confidence to approach women. So this drive element was about overcoming that inertia, about taking action.
Okay, I can see how that would be empowering, like realizing you have the potential, you just need to tap into it.
Right. It's about recognizing your own worth, independent of external factors.
All right, so drive is about that inner confidence. What about inspiration? This one seems a little more, well, mysterious. What does it mean to be inspirational when it comes to attraction?
I think of it as finding your authentic voice, that spark that makes you interesting to the people. It's about expressing yourself genuinely.
I see how that ties back into the idea of balance. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not, it's about discovering what makes you you.
And they actually give you tools and techniques for cultivating inspiration.
Hmm.
It's not just some vague concept. They talk about improving your conversational skills, tapping into your sense of humor.
Right. It reminds me of that story about Zack, the co-author. He went from being totally awkward to being like the life of the party.
It shows you that these elements aren't just theoretical, they actually work.
Okay, so we've got drive, which is that inner motivation, and inspiration, which is finding your voice. Now, what about authenticity? Doesn't that seem a little redundant? I mean, if you're being genuine, isn't that enough?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it might seem that way at first, but I think authenticity goes a step further. It's about owning your individuality, embracing your quirks, even your imperfections.
So basically being comfortable in your own skin.
Exactly. Because those imperfections, those quirks, they're often what make you unique, what makes you stand out.
And I can see how that would tie into attraction. When you're comfortable with yourself, it shows.
It goes against that whole idea that you need to be perfect to be attractive. In fact, they even argue that being vulnerable can be a strength.
That's an interesting thought. So it's not about trying to be flawless, it's about being real and relatable.
Exactly. And they even talk about how making mistakes can actually work in your favor as long as you own them and stay true to yourself.
I like that. Okay, so we've got drive, inspiration, authenticity, and finally, connection. That one seems pretty self-explanatory, right?
Well, it is about connecting with people, but it's more than just making small talk. It's about creating that sense of shared understanding, that emotional intimacy that makes relationships meaningful.
So moving beyond the superficial.
Exactly. And they give you specific strategies for doing that, like active listening, asking engaging questions, finding common ground.
They even talk about the different stages of connection, from that initial spark of interest to deeper levels of intimacy, like a roadmap for building relationships.
And they emphasize that this connection element shouldn't be forced. It's about letting things unfold naturally, building trust over time.
Okay, so we've got drive, inspiration, authenticity, and connection. These all seem like really valuable qualities, not just for dating, but for life in general.
Definitely. And remember, the key is balance. There's no one-size-fits-all formula. It's about understanding how these elements interact.
So how do we do that? How do we actually put this into practice?
That's where things get really interesting. The book is full of exercises and techniques, real-world examples. It's about taking these concepts and applying them to your own life.
And this brings us back to those intriguing nuggets we mentioned before. We've got Tony, the construction worker, with his cryptic advice, and that image of the college friend's dorm room.
Let's start with Tony.
Hmm.
Remember, Rob is really struggling with approach anxiety, and then Tony, this construction worker, just scribbles 12 words on a napkin that supposedly change everything.
What are the words? Come on, tell me.
Well, they don't actually reveal the exact words in that part of the book, but they imply it was a really simple but profound shift in perspective that helped Rob overcome his fear.
Ugh, that's such a tease. But I guess it makes sense. They want people to figure out their own solutions, their own 12 words.
Right. It's about finding what works for you. But they do give you clues about the kind of mindset shift that Tony's advice triggered.
So it's about challenging your limiting beliefs and stepping outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. And that brings us to the dorm room. Remember, it was Rob's college friend who seemed to effortlessly attract women. And the dorm room, well, let's just say it was a testament to his success.
Yeah, I think we all got the picture. But what was the takeaway? Are they saying we should all have dorm rooms that look like that?
No, not at all. It was more about illustrating natural attraction. This guy was just comfortable with himself, and it showed.
So it's not about trying to copy someone else. It's about finding your own authentic path.
And that's where that whole balance principle comes full circle. It's about being confident, but also genuine and approachable.
Okay, I'm really seeing the bigger picture now. It's not about tricks or manipulation. It's about personal growth and being your best self.
And that's what I find so compelling about this book. It goes beyond just dating advice. It's about understanding what makes people tick. It's about human connection.
We've talked about the 4 elements, those intriguing little stories, but there's still more to uncover, right?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that online forum where readers could connect with the authors and each other, or the hidden mic pickup and commentary where we get to hear Rob in action.
That's right. We get that behind-the-scenes look at how all this plays out in a real-life scenario.
So, ready to dive a little deeper?
Absolutely. Let's see what else this Date Hotter Girls experience has to offer. Okay, so that online forum, what was it like? Kind of a virtual man cave where guys could hang out and talk about dating.
Well, not exactly a man cave.
Yeah.
More like a virtual clubhouse, I guess. It was part of their 28 Days to Success program.
So like taking the ideas from the book and actually putting them into practice.
Yeah, and they could connect with each other and with Rob and Zack directly. Ask questions, share their experiences.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just about bragging about dates or anything?
No, it was more about support and accountability, I think. Like a safe space to discuss the challenges and celebrate the wins.
Imagine getting feedback from the authors themselves. What kind of stuff do you think they were talking about?
Probably lots of questions about applying the 4 elements in real-life situations.
Yeah.
You know, like how much drive is too much?
Mm.
Or how do I balance being authentic with, well, not being totally inappropriate?
Yeah, good point. It's one thing to understand the concepts, but another to actually use them.
And I'm sure there were a lot of conversations about overcoming those common obstacles, like approach anxiety or dealing with rejection.
Oof. Yeah. Rejection's never fun.
But even the so-called failures are valuable, right?
Yeah.
Because you learn from them.
It's all about that growth mindset. Okay, so we've got this virtual community going strong, but what about that hidden mic pickup and commentary? We get to hear Rob actually using these techniques in a real bar, right?
Yeah. A bar in New York City, no less.
Yeah.
It's a pretty high-pressure environment.
Wow, so this is the real deal, not some staged scenario.
And we get to hear the commentary from Rob and Zack as they break it all down. It's like they're giving us a secret decoder ring for the language of attraction.
So we're not just watching it happen, we're actually understanding the thought process behind it.
Exactly. We see how he's reading the situation, adjusting his approach, using those 4 elements to build a connection.
Okay, I'm ready to hit play. But before we do, it's probably important to remember that this is just one example.
Right. What works for Rob in a New York bar might not work for someone else in a different situation.
It's about taking those underlying principles and adapting them to your own style.
So as we listen, pay attention to how he embodies those 4 elements, how he navigates the social dynamics.
It's not about copying him exactly, but seeing those principles in action.
All right. Ready to hear Rob in the wild.
Let's do it. See how those 4 elements of game work in the real world.
And remember, even if you're not, trying to pick someone up in a bar, the ideas behind this stuff are valuable.
Yeah. It's all about confidence, connection, authenticity. Those are important no matter what you're doing.
Exactly. Whether you're dating, making friends, whatever. These insights can help you become a more confident and engaging person.
So there you have it, another deep dive complete. We explored attraction, those four elements of game, even took a trip to a virtual clubhouse and a New York City bar.
It's all about taking these ideas and seeing how they resonate with you, what works for you, what makes sense in your own life.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll be back next time with a brand new deep dive into a completely different topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep connecting.